We're going to get started. Good evening, everyone here from Jerusalem, and good morning or good afternoon to all of you tuning in from different time zones. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've reached 349 days since the horrendous massacre that took place on October 7th, almost a year since Israel was dragged into a war that we never sought to be involved in. And at the same time, we're witnessing increasing struggles of Jewish communities worldwide in the face of growing hate, extremism, and alienation. My name is Sam Robinson, and I'm proud to be here representing the Jewish Agency for Israel and JReady, our platform for crisis management and community resilience. Since October 7th, the Jewish Agency and JReady have been operating on multiple fronts, both to address the needs in Israel, victims of terror, internally displaced citizens, crumbling businesses in the north and south of Israel, and families whose reservists have dropped everything to protect Israel and its people. And in parallel, we're working to reinforce Jewish communities around the world who are facing daily attacks, immense challenges within educational institutions, and the remarkable efforts of community leaders to strengthen our people and secure our future. It's no secret that since October 7th, anti-Semitism in Europe has risen at truly alarming rates. And while the situation may look rather bleak, we've brought one of Israel's top foreign correspondents, Elad Simchayoff, to enlighten us as to the true facts on the ground, and perhaps attempt to share some optimism for the future ahead. But first, I would like to hand over to our wonderful Ayala Nachmias-Verbin, Chair of JReady and the Fund for Victims of Terror at the Jewish Agency for Israel.
Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with you today. And I've got to tell you something and share it with you. I can't believe that we are approaching the first annual commemoration of October 7th massacre. I can't believe the time has passed so quickly, and I can't believe the hostages are still not with their families. What we've gone through since October 7th is truly unimaginable. To see the world honestly standing idly by, doing actually quite nothing, especially when it comes to global organizations like the UN or the Red Cross, doing absolutely nothing. And, having the sympathy of the world for, merely a week, if I want to exaggerate, for Israel, of course, not starting the war, having our people in the Gaza perimeter, sleeping in their homes in Simchat Torah, to understand that the Jewish people are once again to themselves. I think this is a revelation that I did not think that we would all share, especially considering everything that you've been going through out of Israel. In the Jewish Agency and in JReady, we have started on October 12th, as I mentioned, we started a set of webinars. We were trying really to give you a lot more information that you see on media or getting it via social media, and really share with you the truth. Share with you facts so that you will be able to go back to the people that you speak to and be able to share with them. But truth has it that nothing seems to be enough. Nothing seems to be enough, nothing suffices. Because what we're seeing in the world are extreme rallies still going on. We see people, students all over the world, Jewish students all over the world, and not just students, faculties, even in high schools in America, following everything that we've been going through, that you've been going through in past month. We thought that webinars that will share more information with you and know-how, and especially the perspective of what you see and what we can do together. And maybe, as we do in JReady, share the information with each other will be very, very helpful. We're very glad to have with us today a good friend of mine and Channel 12 in Israel correspondent, Elad Simchayoff, who really can give us perspective of what he sees in Europe and actually what we can do for each other. Because as we know, Am Yisrael Arevim Ze Leze is not just a mere phrase. We are really in solidarity in this. And I know that when you're looking from outside to Israel, you see many of the things that are of concern to you. I know that we don't look, I don't want to use the word normal, but nothing here is regular. Nothing here is regular. Again, the hostages are still not home. We see the victims every day. To speak about rehabilitation is something very, very valid, but it's going to take time and it's a whole different term. So when you're looking from the outside into Israel, I know it's difficult. This is part of the purpose that J-Ready is here for you. And this is why these webinars is so important from my point of view, because this is only the start, because we really need to share what we're going through with each other. This is not therapy, you know. We don't do therapy together in J-Ready, but the mere fact that we have each other to speak to share these experiences, these very, very difficult experiences with each other is very, very important. This is why the Jewish Agency in 2020 decided to found the J-Ready platform. I don't think we imagined that within 4 years it will be so necessary and that it would be so essential to deal with issues such as anti-Semitism and such hatred towards Jews. And for that purpose, I want to pass on the one to Elad Simchayoff and the panel. And I really, really hope that it will be fruitful. And again, as always, I invite you to share with us any thoughts that you have, anything that we can do with you. This is the first in a series of webinars that are very important for us because we really sense that when you share, when we share our experiences, we can actually get a new set of tools, and it makes it helpful to share these very, very horrific stories of what's been going on with Jews' hatred and anti-Semitism around the world. But this series of webinars could not have happened without our wonderful partners, Kakal JNF, World Zionist Organization, and my fantastic team of J-Ready, Yael, Leo, Sam, and Gali. And to end with words of Julie Platt from the Jewish Federations of North America, which I use quite often in the past year. Im ein amili mili. If I do not have my people, who am I? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayelet, and thank you to Sam as well. Right before we open the floor to the fascinating conversation that we will have with our fascinating guests, we thought of framing it and giving a bit of context. So if you'll allow me, I'll share the screen and just tell you a little bit about myself and the things that I've seen and experienced in the past year almost. So Ayelet rightly said that Israel got sympathy. She said a week. She said she's exaggerating, and I'm afraid she's really exaggerating, because Israel got sympathy for maybe 5 minutes. These are scenes that I was documenting in London on October 9th, where merely 48 hours, even less, after the horrific acts of Hamas throughout Israel, information has started to gather. We knew that there were hundreds of casualties, dozens of hostages that were kidnapped, civilians. We knew that there were brutal acts of terror and murder and maiming and torture. We knew all of that already on October 9th. But in central London, just outside the Israeli embassy, a crowd gathered, chanting chants with signs, placards and other flags, all directed against Israel, all blaming Israel, although at this period of time, Israel was most definitely the victim who has not yet coped and even started to realize and understand what happened to it. And I was broadcasting to our main news channel. I'll show you just a tiny bit of the scenes there.
תעבור, ואני אברח מפה, מסוכן מאוד. נכון מאוד, יונית, הפגנה אנטי-ישראלית פרו-פלסטינית שמתחילה להיות יותר סוערת מאשר הייתה בדקות האחרונות עם חזיזים.
This is what happens. This is what happens. And that's why I'm here, to show my solidarity with the Palestinian people.
But I have to ask you, when you're saying this is what happens, we saw what happened Saturday.
Yeah.
Are you justifying it? Are you saying that it's okay?
What channel are you from?
I'm from Israel.
Okay, I'm not talking to you, bro. Water, do not answer any of his questions. Do not talk to him. You're just
So this is October 9th. And I've heard three main ideas there in that demonstration. One was from people saying, we're not justifying what happened, but you have to put the larger context in play and you have to understand the larger context of it all. The second idea was we acknowledge what happened, but we justify it. Because for us, each and every Israeli is an illegal occupier, settler that needs to be driven out of the land of Palestine. The third idea is the most alarming one, maybe, and that was pretty widely spread throughout the demonstrators there, who were saying to me, we do not believe what happened. We do not believe your side of the story. We do not believe that there were mass murders and torture and rape and whatnot. We do not believe that. And I've heard all three ideas merely 48 hours after the horrific attacks of October 7th were happening in Israel. And ever since then, we've been seeing record-breaking heights of anti-Semitism. We're seeing it all around us. And I think that one of the most maybe alarming and profound places that we're experiencing anti-Semitism is in higher education and in universities and colleges throughout the world. And the best example of that will be the congressional hearing that happened in December, where three presidents of the most luxurious universities and higher education facilities in the world faced a very simple question, or allegedly a simple question. What would you do if somebody within the campus will call for the extermination of the Jewish people as a whole? I'm sure you all know it, so we'll go through it very briefly, but the answers still give me the chills even now, so many months after.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking, specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the
Yeah, we all know that, and just in order to save time and to get to the discussion, I'm rushing the videos a bit because we all know exactly what happened, and we all saw what happened throughout colleges and campuses. It didn't happen only in the United States, unfortunately. We saw it all too well in Europe and elsewhere as well. You can see some of the scenes that were happening in campuses throughout the United States, just to get a taste of it if you're not familiar. So yeah, these visions and scenes are unfortunately they became too familiar also in Europe as well. So we talked about universities and about colleges, and obviously anti-Semitism does not end only there, because we see it throughout social media as well. You can see some of the examples mostly on the right side of the screen. Some personal examples that I encountered in the past 11 months. You can see here, "Death to all Jews," that was trending on Twitter in the United Kingdom. There's a backstory to it, but still, if you're Jewish and you open Twitter on the same day, that's what you saw. Images of some sort of a doll, which very clearly has a distinction of an anti-Semitic distinction to it, that was sent to me. And of course, the flag of Israel with the swastika instead of the Star of David. When I filed a complaint to Twitter, or X rather, The answer that I got is that this specific image does not violate the terms of the community and the platform. We can see here there's some numbers that are pretty astounding, in my opinion at least, about the relationship between usage of TikTok, for example, and having anti-Semitic or anti-Israeli views. Spending 30 minutes on TikTok daily significantly decreases the chances of holding anti-Semitic views. And as you can see, 39% of heavy users of TikTok falsely believe that Israel was established on the grounds of the Palestinian state, which is factually untrue, of course. Now, the demonstrations are not new. I've been covering anti-Israeli demonstrations for quite some time here in London. 2015, you can see here a couple of lovely chaps holding the Hezbollah flag. London 2021. Again, I'll just show you very briefly.
For my soul, for my blood, all for you, Al-Aqsa.
Show me the shoe. What do you have in the shoe?
Israel flag. Step on Israel. You don't believe in Israel. Israel is not real.
What do you mean you don't believe in it? So these things are familiar and are not new. What is new is the levels of aggression, the scope of anti-Semitic incidents and violence. And in here you can see some images from a member of parliament here in Britain. His name is Mike Freer. He is not Jewish himself, but he represents, or rather represented, a Jewish district here in London. And as a representative of a Jewish district, he was very vocally against anti-Semitism and vocally for the release of the Israeli hostages. That caused the image that you see in the center. Two unknown perpetrators invaded to his office and set it on fire. It was completely burnt. And that led Mike Freer to announce that he will be retiring from British politics. He was practically just driven out forcefully. I've spoken to him and he explained that although he's been treated with violence and threats throughout his career, things that he's experiencing since October 7th are on a completely different scale, completely different level, both from the magnitude of the threats and the messages that he's receiving, and also the aggression that he's receiving, hence the criminal act of setting his office alight. I've been to quite a lot of demonstrations in my time. Here is a demonstration from The Hague, outside of the ICJ, deliberating about the South African suit against Israel. And if you focus on the photo of me and my dark gray jacket, the white spots that you can see throughout the picture on the jackets are all spit marks from that demonstrators. Again, I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've been covering demonstrations throughout the tenure. Never have I experienced levels of hatred and aggression from European demonstrators just because I'm representing an Israeli media outlet. We can see the numbers as well. The graph says it all. This is a graph from the UK, CST, the body that is in charge of the security for the Jewish community. And you can see the difference between the numbers of 2023 compared to the numbers of the 10 years prior. Some of the examples that we can see, this is a girls' school, an all-girls school in North London, a Jewish school, obviously, that in October, I think it was just merely a few days after October 7th, was sprayed with red paint. And again, this is a Jewish all-girls school in North London. Paris, November 2023, Berlin as well, Star of David's being sprayed on houses of Jewish members of the community. And in Malmö, Sweden, this is November, there was a pro-Palestinian demonstration in which the Israeli flag was burnt. Not a new thing in anti-Israeli demonstrations, I'm afraid, but the thing that caught my attention here is that this specific demonstration and the act of burning the Israeli flag were done in front of the largest and main synagogue in Malmö. So that's a clear indication of where they're facing. If you can see, the protester is actually moving the flag and facing the flag towards the synagogue as if wanting to convey a message to the Jewish community of the city. I was in Malmö doing a documentary about the city just before the Eurovision, and I have tons and tons of footage, of very alarming footage from Malmö. But the thing I wanted to show you, because we're talking about anti-Semitism, is a chilling moment, in my opinion, that happened in broad daylight, in the middle of the street. It was a market, a very central market in Malmö, where me and my colleague walked out and started speaking to the locals there about us, Jewish journalists, Israeli journalists, and you can see where the conversation was heading after that.
أشرف حتى القرد الخنازير أشرف من اليهود والله أشرف بتقول الخنازير أفضل من اليهود أفضل من مليون مرة وأنا لو بيدي ما بقي ولا يهود على الكرة الأرضية أنا لو بيدي ما بقي إسرائيل على الكرة الأرضية كلها من جماعتهم بس يحكي عربي لا يقول لك هم نفسي ما يهمنا هم من جماعتهم بدنا نذبحها على السكين لإسرائيل كل شيء إسرائيل بدنا نذبحه على السكين لا أنت بدك هاي الأطفال اللي بغزة هاي الأطفال اللي بغزة اللي قتلتها إسرائيل ولك هاي مزرعة عالمية ولك بحياتها ما صارت بالدنيا كلها ما صارت. انا حكيت لك انه المجزره بلشت في مع حماس ايش ذبحوا حماس ذبحوا انتوا على طول انتوا بتقلبوا الحق باطل انتوا جماعه باطل انتوا الله لما خلقكم انتوا باطل خلقكم على الباطل انتوا باطل جماعه باطل انتوا حرام يكون لكم وجود اصلا في الدنيا.
As you can see, broad daylight in the middle of Malmö. So Sam said, rightfully so, that the situation is very bleak, and that we're trying to at least bring some optimism. So at least my take, after showing you everything that's wrong in Europe and the United States and elsewhere as well for Jews, the optimistic take is that there are things to be done and things are being done. And maybe the most important optimistic take of it all is that the Jewish communities throughout Europe have magnificent people. They have very courageous and inspirational members of communities, and you will have the privilege of meeting three of them right here. So we have Yael Landman with us from Brussels. She's from the Brussels Jewish Security Organization, BESC. It's an acronym, and Yael also established CARE, which is now EU CARE, program that with the support of EU funding expanded to 18 Jewish communities across Europe in order to protect Jewish communities throughout the continent. So Shalom Yael. Alongside Yael, we have Dr. Zhuja. I'm not going to try and say your last name. You're more than welcome to say it. I will probably just butcher the name, so I'm not even going to try. But we're very pleased that you're here with us. You're the head of the anti-Semitic research of NJSC, the Nordic Jewish Security Council. You're from Copenhagen. And thank you very much for being here as well. And last but not least, we have Yochanan Edelman, nicknamed Hani, which is a great nickname, you have to admit. And Hani is representing the Antisemitism Reporting Office in Austria. This is the only organization in Austria dealing exclusively with all matters related to anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, all of these three people that you see here have been having their hands full for the past 11 months, especially. So shalom to you all. Hello, and thank you very much for joining this conversation. And I want to start off by asking you, because again, I was framing the conversation and putting some context to it with the numbers of anti-Semitic attacks and then the texts that we can hear and the trends that we're seeing. We all have seen dramatic increase of acts and hatred towards the Jewish communities after October 7th. I'll appreciate if each one of you can please share with us, how has your life and the lives of the communities that you represent changed in the past 11 months? Zhuja, maybe we'll start with you.
Your pronunciation is perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much.
I practiced.
And thank you so much for having me here. I think that we are representing in the Nordic Jewish Security Council 5 countries: Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Iceland. And of course, it's not the same in all of the countries. But what I can say is that historically, this region was, lower in the anti-Semitism if you are looking at the World War II and the survivors of the Jewish people. So I must say that after October 7th, it was a huge shock to the Jewish people, how much they felt abandoned, by the Danish population. We have a lot of migrants. I must say, that who have been, organizing a lot of pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Even now, we have at least once a week a huge pro-Palestinian demonstration. And anti-Semitism has risen by 1,200% in the region since October 7th. Again, it's a huge shock for the very kind and nice Danish Jewish people, for example, and the Swedish, who has never experienced this so close by. And again, we are trying to deal with it, but what I can see is that they are still in shock. They are trying to cope with it, but it's a lot. Just to mention 2 of the biggest incidents. One was Eurovision, for example, because that is also in our region, Malmö. We have seen during Eurovisions 4 or 5 demonstrations per day, 40,000 people there. It was insane to see how much people can hate. And also just recently in Denmark, it just came out that there was an elderly lady who her neighbor or one of the persons tried to set her home for fire just because she is Jewish. These are the incidents which are very shocking for the society, because it was not happened before. We had in 2015, unfortunately, a terrorist attack where we lost in Denmark one of our guards. But otherwise, it was never seen what is going on right now, and the Nordic people are very, 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 very shocked. The Nordic Jewish.
And again, the number that you said, Zsuzsa,
1,200%.
200%. Unbelievable. Hani, I presume that in Austria as well, you're seeing a similar trend.
Where is there a similar trend? So we record anti-Semitic incidents according to a very similar methodology as the CST, and the number of which you were quoting before. And I could throw around 800%, 900%, 1,000%. I have spoken in so many panel discussions in Austria over the last year and was throwing around numbers. And those numbers actually, at the end of the day, do not mean a lot anymore, because they're so exorbitantly high that actually they don't tell a huge story anymore. And so what I want to say up front is that we have to differentiate, because these are things that are often being mixed up, between 3 areas that people as I said now, very often mix up. Like, first of all, everything related to Islamic terrorism. Taylor Swift concerts having been canceled in Austria, everybody heard about it. It is one of those high impact, rare probability kind of events that actually does not really have something to do directly with the Jewish community. So I do not want to talk too much about this aspect of Jewish life. It is actually the most important aspect of Jewish life, not only in Israel, but also around the world. But actually, apart from the security measures, not necessarily in the day-to-day goings of Jews in Austria, and actually also in Europe. We could talk about Islamic terrorism in Austria, like Austria alternatingly with Belgium. Actually, according to Europol statistics, is number 1 and 2 in the last 6-7 years. Belgium 1, 2 in the per capita numbers of arrests and convictions of jihadists. So this is one area that I just leave aside. So first of all, we have like the quantitative aspect. Like I'm head of an organization that is like collecting, systematically recording this kind of data that is then used in all kinds of media reporting and policy decisions and all kinds of international reports too. And obviously the numbers have like exploded. And by the way, a lot, because you were talking about, and you were showing yourself on October 9, I guess also in London, but in Vienna, as in Germany, we are in very close contact with the people in Germany that are doing the same work as we do. Like the demonstrations, the rallies have already started on October 7th. So the blood was not even dry, and actually the fighting has not even ended, and the sheer might of what happened didn't even percolate. That you have already had those rallies, very aggressive, not very large, but very aggressive, how do you call it, trivializing rallies in the middle of Vienna. And yeah, so we had like tons of anti-Semitic incidents. It was not as bad as we feared. So actually, like if we look at previous periods of escalations in the so-called Middle East conflict, there was always like a jump in incidents, in attacks, in physical assaults and threats. So we actually expected the worst. It was not as bad. Where it was really, really, really bad was schools. And I know also from the UK that they also, like in the year before, we also pointed it out in our report for the year 2022, there was like a sharp increase of anti-Semitic incidents in schools. And that number totally exploded in the weeks after October 7. We had like a huge number of Jewish pupils that had to leave schools, had to switch schools. There have been cases of like bullying, insults, physical assaults, graffiti. And the school system was, frankly, absolutely overwhelmed with the situation. So that was only one example. And the other aspect, like the third area, is what Zsuzsa called and summarized as abandonment. I would have wanted to call it differently, but actually abandonment pretty much hits it out of the park. It's a mixture of abandonment, lack of empathy, people that had friends or thought they had friends, roommates, colleagues at work, at university, that not only like totally had no kind of empathy for what happened, like not asking, how are you okay, can I do anything for you, or something like that, but were actually faced with a sheer, like even before the counteroffensive began, were faced with enmity and with a cold, not even cold shoulder, like much more, which was very difficult and which actually led to a withdrawal of Jews from certain areas of public life at universities, students that had to leave their roommates' arrangements because, yeah, it wasn't possible, friendships that broke. And yeah, so this is like things that are not captured in the statistics, in any statistics, but that were actually the one that left the biggest mark.
And I have to tap onto what you said about schools. Most definitely, that's a big change that we see compared to previous years. And I've just been handed new information based on a survey that says that 68.7% of high school students throughout the world, Jewish high school students, experience anti-Semitism by other students. 26.6% said that they experienced anti-Semitism by teachers, and 27% said that they experienced anti-Semitism by school principals or head teachers. That's in the past year, and we're talking about high schools throughout the world. Yael, for you, as someone who's in charge of supporting and helping Jewish communities throughout Europe as part of EU Care, tell me about the previous 11 months. How does this period of time looks from your perspective?
So if I talk about Belgium, we see the exact same trend, like Zsuzsa and Hani said, especially for young people. It's exactly the same in university, but also in schools. Kids were harassed, aggressed. We see an increase in violence, and not just the victims are very young, but also the perpetrator and also from teachers. So this is very new to Belgium. Also, the amount of physical attacks. Normally, we have maybe one case per year, and this time we saw a very big increase, especially in Antwerp, where the Jewish community is more recognizable because they dress more traditionally, but not just in Antwerp. A lot of protests every day. For the past year, we have protests, anti-Israeli protests. And during these protests, we hear slogans like death to Jews. So it's not just against Israel, It's mostly against Israel, but we also heard a lot of anti-Semitic slogans against Jews, and people were really scared. But thanks to initiatives like the U-Care and the training that we've been giving all around Europe, we managed to lower the level of stress and anxiety of the Jewish communities because we teach them how to cope with dangerous situations, and we give them very simple tools. But it's true that we started the project before October 7, and as October 7 happened, people started to ask for this kind of program and kind of help because this was so new to them. Anti-Semitism is not new, but the level, the amount, and the fear that it triggered was really new. So yes, they were very happy and grateful to see that we were actually prepared with something to give them.
Sure, and I appreciate if you and Hani and Georgia will also give, as we progress with our conversation, some tools for the people who are listening and surely have experienced this trend and the horrific reality that we have to face in the past year. But I want to ask you all, because Yael, you mentioned that some of the acts are serving an agenda of anti-Semitism, pure anti-Semitism, hatred against Jews. Some of it is more directed towards Israel. Some of it is combined, like the protest that I showed in Malmo, where the Israeli flag was burned, but it was in front of a synagogue. So I wanted to ask all of you, Hani, we'll start with you this time. Does it even matter whether it's an act that is directed towards Israel or towards the Jewish community or combined? Does it even matter? Do you make any difference between the agenda or the rationale behind the act?
It depends what you're talking about. So if you're talking, for example, about the rallies, I mean, it's one thing. If you talk about the attacks and the things that happen in schools, it's something different again. Also, the kind of perpetrators that we have, like the ideological background, as we call it, is different in all areas. But obviously, in our methodology, like also all other methodologies all over Europe, Israel-related anti-Semitism is one of the types of anti-Semitism, and we know that anti-Semitism is a very creative and a very fluid and adaptive kind of phenomenon. That according to the situation you're in, you can take this kind of anti-Semitism, this kind of anti-Semitism. In the current situation is totally, absolutely, almost always Israel-related anti-Semitism, where you have different codes, not even codes, usually it's outright. And you have even very crude forms of Shoah distortion, which was something that last week we had a European get-together with other organizations in the field talking about the different forms of Shoah distortion. That is a very, very vile kind of anti-Semitism, because in this case, it also switches around the perpetrator and the victim, and makes the perpetrator the victim, and the other way around, which specifically in this case is pure evil. And so I don't know whether I answered your question. I don't want to delve too much into it and talk too much about it. Like in schools, the background of the perpetrators, first of all, it went from the age, most of the incidents were teenagers, but we had incidents till the age of 4. So you can imagine that if a child at the age 4 is doing something, in that case, getting a crisis and hitting a kid because it drew an Israeli flag on so-called Flag Day in Austria, then and it's in all cases it was a Muslim background, and it was both children with a refugee background, refugees coming after 2015. But also teenagers that have a Chechen background and background in the Balkans and Turkish background. When it comes to the rallies, it's different. It's more, they're almost always organized by left-wing, left extremist activists that come from the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. That is in its core a very left extremist anti-imperialist movement. But obviously there are also many, many Islamists participating in those rallies. So it's a hodgepodge of different things, but the main organizers are actually from the BDS movement, from the left extremist movement, and obviously the core of their ideology is Israel-related anti-Semitism, which in that situation also mixes with anti-imperialism, anti-USA, pro-Russia, obviously, and so you have a mixture of all kinds of things that comes together here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm connecting to what Hani just said, because many of the perpetrators of anti-Semitic incidents, they would claim, and they do claim, that they are only opposing Israel and that they are not acting on an anti-Semitic level or basis. What can you say about that from your experience and the things that you're seeing?
I can say I am smiling, although this is this is like a cynical smile, because when we are talking about anti-Semitism, I think that we are talking about the young age, and you have seen it, you have shown it also in your statistics, that I think that it's very important to point out that those young children are indoctrinated. You know, either they are bringing it from home, at home by their parents, or they are learning it online, and they are just ignorant. Many times they are just ignorant. So this is what I have seen in the Nordic region, that we have the radical Islamist population, which is a shock, I think, for the whole Nordic countries, how many people they are. And I think this is actually a good thing for us, because they are exposing themselves right now, because these people have been living in the population for years now, but nobody were aware of them. And now they are exposing themselves, and they are exposing their agenda. I think that is something which the Jewish communities should use for their own advantage, to show that these are the people who are against us. You know, that is, I think that is a very important point. The other thing is that it was also a shock for me, because I am originally from Hungary, to see the very nice, Nordic, very PC human rights people, how quickly they turned against Israel. And they are saying that, first of all, it's ignorance. I'm sorry to say, but they are not educated, they are ignorant, and there is a lot of white guilt. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, she's Danish, and she told me that basically everything what is going on in the Middle East is the fault of colonization and Christianity, and basically Christianity made the Muslim people turn against the Jews. And when I heard this, I was like, okay, now I understand where your anti-Semitism is coming from. She also told me that she is anti-Zionist but not anti-Semitic. I explained to her that unless she was standing up for all of the cases, like Iranian women, Taliban women, Syrian children, what about Sudan, Burkina Faso, all of the rest of the world, and you are picking one country, which is a very, very complicated conflict, then don't tell me that you are not anti-Semitic. You are. If you are not, because you are picking one conflict, it is which are the Jews. And as we have seen it many times, if they are not Jews involved, nobody cares about it. So I think that there is a very strong counter-argument against it, and I think that we should say it much more. So what I can see is that, we need to separate the crowd, and I also believe that these people are making a lot of noise. We also just had Greta Thunberg, at our doorstep 2 weeks ago, doing some kind of university protest that the university takes out, the BDS movement, which was very funny because there were actually 5 people at the protest. Nobody cared about it. But, afterwards, it was on Instagram. So basically, they give voice to her. And I think that is also something which you are a media expert, that sometimes we should just ignore these kind of things, because you are empowering them even more. And so basically in what I can see is that there are different kind of anti-Semitism. I completely agree with Hani, and I also believe that we need to address this kind of anti-Semitism from a different point of view. Many times it's noise, many times it's ignorance, many times people are just talking, but and it is very bad for us, but many times we just need to address these people. Education is something which is a hard thing to discuss, but I would say, like, we can tell them that you are just wrong. You are wrong, and that's it. And you just need to accept it. And this is when I am having these kind of conversations with people who are coming to me. It's like their arguments are very weak, and you can see at one point that actually this is coming from an emotion, and you need to find out if the emotion is white guilt or real anti-Semitism or these kind of things.
Yael, connecting to what Jojo just said, regardless of the agenda, the rationale, and the basis, and where the anti-Semitism is coming from, the end result is the same. And when you have to tackle it and not only combat it, but also give tools to communities in order to deal with it? So Zsuzsa was talking about education and about sometimes just ignoring it. What other tools can you recommend and you're educating the communities to learn and use in order to tackle anti-Semitism?
So it depends. If it's just insults or people harassing, it's one thing. And if you feel threatened, it's another things. So about if you are in the university, like for example, my niece studied in Amsterdam, and in her auditorium, she was the only Jewish person. And it was in anthropology, and the whole auditorium was anti-Israeli, and she felt completely alone and completely threatened. At one point, she had to leave actually Amsterdam, and she came back to Belgium because she couldn't deal with it anymore. And she didn't have the tool also to talk about it and try to talk to these people and explain. So also our people need to be also much more educated of what's going on and to explain the difference between being Israeli and being a Jew in Europe. So it's about we give lectures and we give workshops, and we also provided a guide that we sent to all the students around Europe on how to explain what to do, what are the tools that exist, for example, online, or the organization that can help them to try to talk to these people. Now, when you talk to someone like Juja said and Hani said, that is not educated and that is not even trying to understand the truth, they just throw out slogans because it's cool also today to be anti-Israeli and to show it. They don't try to understand, so it's very difficult to talk to them. So at one point, there is no point of trying to explain. You just need to leave, unfortunately, the conversation, because there is no way that you can convince these people. They are happy with their truth. Now, if you talk about tools when you feel aggressed or someone wants to attack you, the first thing also that we say is to get away as fast as possible from the situation. Get away, do not try to interfere, do not try to do something, and call the police, call for help. We also teach them how to recognize a suspicious behavior, because it's not about suspicious people, it's the same behavior for everyone, women, men, young people, elderly. When someone is about to commit an attack or is about to do something bad, it's the same behavior. And there are specific tools to recognize that. There are specific tools also when you find yourself in a bus and someone sees your Star of David or something and engage with you. We have also specific situations and what to do if the person just stares at you or try to start to yell towards you, or when the people sit next to you. This is the third phase. What can you do to just get away, and to also call for help around you, talk to the people around you and tell them that you need help and tell them how they can help you. And for example, on a bus, go to the driver and tell him that I am being harassed, and call the police, and really things like that.
These are all good advices, but you got me thinking, because a few months back I exposed a story about 3 Jewish, 2 of them were Israelis, that were walking in central London in the West End, speaking Hebrew. They were attacked by a mob. The Met Police took almost 30 minutes to arrive to the scene. In 30 minutes, they could have been lynched 10 times. So that leads me to my next question, because a lot of what you're saying, Yael, is directed at getting help and getting support from authorities and maybe the general community and general public as well. Do you all feel that you get the support that you need, whether it's from the local authorities, governments, maybe even the State of Israel and organizations? Do you feel like you're getting the support? Judah, what do you say? Do you feel like you're getting the support you need?
I am talking about 5 countries, so I think that it's different. What I can say is that the Danish police and authorities are wonderful. Swedish as well, they are very much there for us. Sweden has a much worse situation than Denmark, I must say. For example, how the Eurovision was managed by the Swedish police, it's absolutely wonderful. What I can say is that in both Denmark and Sweden, the Jewish communities have a very close cooperation with the authorities to ensure the security of the Jewish communities, and we are very grateful for that. Plus, I think that what we need to understand is that, and also what I think that the radical Muslim population underestimates the style of communication by the Nordic people. They are not going to go out and they are not going to shout at their face. What they are going to do, they are going to go for the legislation, and they are making sure that the space, of harassing Jews is getting narrower. For example, in Denmark, all of the parties have decided to make a 12-step to combat anti-Semitism in legislation. This is great news. In Sweden, which is historically a very, very liberal and free country, now they have also made the hate speech much, much stricter, and now they are going to criminalize the Holocaust denial, which was never happened before. In Finland, and both in Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, they started to make the migration laws more strict. And this is also aimed at the Muslim population, actually. So what I can see is Norway. Let's not talk about Norway, because Norway is, the Norwegian government is very anti-Israel. So unfortunately, that is something which I cannot say good things about. But what I can see is that the Nordic style is that we are not going to engage directly. We are going to make a legislation stricter, and for that I am very, very, and we are all very, very grateful for the Nordic government, and they are aware of the level of anti-Semitism, and they are very much on the side of the Jewish people. So there I can see a lot of positive progress. It's not immediate, and it will take time, and it will take a lot of education also in the schools. But I can see that we are going into the good direction there. And I am also working with Germany a bit, and I can see that in Germany, the same legislation is happening as well. In Germany, the legislation is getting more and more strict. So that I think that these are good news, actually.
Yeah, do you share the optimism?
So on the ground, we have a very good relationship with local police. Okay, so for our events, our schools, everything, we get a police patrol, and they come to secure and help us secure the facilities. But if you look at the state, for example, we have this work session that started a year ago. They try to combat, but they're not really well organized, and it's a lot of talking, and we don't see concrete measure. For example, we will desperately need fundings to help us secure our facilities, because right now it's the community members that needs to pay for their own security, and it's not normal. And we cannot get them to help us with that. So on one hand, yes, on the ground, we have help from the police. On the other hand, legislation-wise also, it's not really there to prosecute people who make some anti-Semitic acts. So for Belgium, it's kind of in between. But what I can say is that the EU, for example, are making a lot of effort to the European Union. So really making huge efforts to combat anti-Semitism with all the fundings and the program. And for example, they are the one funding the UCare, and they're doing amazing stuff. So if I look at this perspective, I can be kind of optimistic, because we are moving in the good direction, European-wise.
In Austria, do you feel like you're getting the support the Jewish community needs?
Yeah, so I guess we in Austria in quite a privileged situation in many regards. Okay, even before October 7, but especially afterwards too. So apart from like symbolic things like flying the Israeli flag on October 7 right from the start above the seat of the government, which led for lots of hate, and where one of the rallies on October 7 actually took place. There is like a plethora of legal and political measures that have been undertaken over the last years, actually. So Juju was talking about in Denmark, I know about it, about the strategy against anti-Semitism. It was, I think, introduced 1 year after the one in Austria. I'm not 100% sure. Austria introduced a very groundbreaking, actually, and much lauded anti-Semitism strategy, national strategy against anti-Semitism in 2021. With tons of measures. Many of them have already been introduced. Also funding for the security of the Jewish community. Also training for all police officers in Austria. And there is a very, very long list of measures that have been announced, and not only announced, but actually also introduced, because there is usually a huge gap between the two of them. There was also surveys led by the Austrian Parliament regarding anti-Semitism, which were very helpful in actually really putting the finger on the areas that are problematic in Austria in regards to anti-Semitism. There is like initiatives together with the police under the name, how do you translate it in English? Together Safe, quite stupid. With tons of measures where the Jewish community and police officers up to the lowest level would communicate with one another. Yesterday evening, for example, there was like a concert of a police capella and the choir of the Jewish community, something like that. Yeah, so it's not only on the symbolic level, it's also actually on the ground. Austria has a very good relationship with police, like the security. I'm not from the security, but the Austrian Jewish community security has very good relationships with all levels of police and of national authorities, anti-terrorist organizations, and has had it for like decades, not like in Denmark, only since the attack in 2015. So yeah, they're in a very good way. I also want to go into a question about Israel and about what Israel could do for us. I personally do not have tons of contact. I don't have in my organization, within the framework of my organization, no contact whatsoever with any Israeli entity. The Jewish community obviously does. An idea, I mean, a few weeks ago, I was part of a meeting. I think it was even sponsored by one of the Israeli ministries regarding the fight against online anti-Semitism and using AI to fight online anti-Semitism. Actually, nothing really happened in that regard. It would be very, very interesting, because online anti-Semitism is really, it's an enormous problem. I mean, you, Elad, were mentioning before that you were trying to report incidents on Twitter or on Facebook, I don't know. We tried it, we've been trying it for years. There is now a huge legal change that took place in Europe in February this year, the Digital Services Act, that actually forces the large platforms to introduce safeguards and to like erase not only anti-Semitic content, but hate speech and illegal content as fast as possible from the platform. It's not really working as far as we can see. So maybe in that regard, it would be very interesting if some Israeli know-how could be put into the game. I mean, maybe you can also send some pagers to our enemies. I don't know. Yeah, so that's actually everything that I would have much more to say, but that is like the gist of it. So we are like in a very privileged situation, actually, Jews in Austria feel. Apart from all the things that I was saying before, it's not for lack of protection and of support from the government and from local authorities.
I have to say, hearing the sentence that Jews in Austria are very privileged while talking about anti-Semitism fills my heart. So I was happy that you said that sentence. And right before we have to go, Hani, I'm sorry, but right before we have to go, I do want to give you all the chance to leave us with some optimism and some inspiration and strength. How do each one of you deal with the alarming, concerning, frightening, difficult period of time that we're facing as Jews in our prospective communities throughout Europe? What do you find yourself that keeps you stronger and optimistic looking forward? I think you can start. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Because my connection is unstable, so I don't know how long you will be seeing me here. For me, I am also a mother of 2 children, so I think that it's very important that they see the survivor spirit. We are Jewish, although this is very, very sad, but it's not our first rodeo. We have gone through this, and we are going to survive. We are the masters of survivors, and I think that this is also something which we are going to survive, and we can see that there are also some positive developments which will impact the future of our children. I hope in a good way. Yes, it's very tragic that here we go again, but again, I have no doubt that we are going to survive this. And also, I think that if we forget who we are, Judaism is about the enjoyment of life, the love of life. And if I start to be sad every day, afraid to be Jewish, then they won. And I am not going to give in for that. So I am like, I love everyone who I can, and whoever is, against us, we are here to fight them. And I think that is which is empowering me and empowering all of us to know that. And I think that we Jews have an awareness which none of the people in the world have. And that is also, that kind of awareness about what is really going on in the world is also a privilege, what we should not forget and what we should use for our own advantage.
Here. Hani, Yael, any things that you particularly see in an optimistic way in this period of time?
I think the fact that we are taking actions, we are not just standing there as victims, but we are taking actions towards our security to feel empowered, more resilient, and also transmissions, like everything that we can give to our kids to show them that, yes, we are in difficult times, but we will get through it like we always did. And mostly for me is to be active and not being a victim. This is the most important thing that I want to transmit, but also to give to all the communities.
Hani?
Yeah, so I was fearing this question because I'm like a fundamentally cynical kind of person, even more than you, Zsuzsa, believe me. No, but being cynical, I have to say it is very difficult to find optimistic ways of thinking about the whole situation. I think that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But this is sounds like a cheap slogan, but it's actually really true, and I actually thought about this all of my life. Another thing is like we should be thankful for the life we have. We should, how should I say, reconsider relationships that we have. Maybe think about some grudges that we held against some people from before October 7, because now we know what actually really, really defines life and what is important in life. And yeah, like it's small things. It doesn't have to be big things. And yeah, to try to wake up in the morning and when you put the foot on the ground next to your bed, to have like a positive mindset, even if things around you are not great, and seek consolence, solace, I don't know how to call it, in your immediate vicinity. Meet friends, talk to friends, be together with them, cherish them, and because who knows what's happening tomorrow, next week? Nobody knows.
Yeah, and I have to just finish up and say that the thing that gives me optimism and strength is doing exactly what we did here. And thank you for JReady for giving us the opportunity to talk about our problems, find solutions, and mainly be together as one big community. So Hani, Zsuzsa, Yael, toda rabba. Thank you very much for the time and for you sharing your stories and insights. And to all of the people here who tuned in and joined us, thank you very much as well. Sam, the floor is yours.
So much, Elad. It was touch and go for a bit. I think you did manage to make us a little more optimistic, and you definitely made us smarter. So a huge thank you for this conversation. And of course, thank you to Yael, to Zsuzsa, to Hani, your incredible efforts and truly impressive work. I feel like I can thank you on behalf of the entire Jewish people. And to all of you watching, we really welcome you to access our resources at jready.org. Please follow us on social media. We'd love for you to reach out and get involved. Meanwhile, please stay safe and stay united. As they say, together we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the possibility to be here.